Again, thanks for joining today. Just today's presenters or people who are participating is myself, Clive Evans. I'm the Director of the Client Services within Aspirico, primarily focusing on Ireland and the UK. And prior to joining Aspirico, I was the CEO of an organisation that supported adults with learning disabilities. I was there for 4 years. And we had residential supported living day services and respite services. And so I'm very familiar with the space, but I have a history of being involved with adults with learning difficulties in particular, with intellectual disabilities for 20 years plus. So that's my background. I'm also delighted to have with me today Siobhan Buckley, Quality Manager from the Prosper Group, well known in the Irish sector, and also Emer Keenan, the Research and Development Officer, again within the Prosper Group. We'll be looking forward to hearing from them the learnings. So today's topic that we're going to be touching upon is basically going digital. Obviously, it's a big journey, and many have trodden it already. And I suppose today's session is really to focus in on the key drivers, why go digital, and the benefits that can be gleaned from it, as well as maybe some tips in terms of approaching it. And most importantly, then we'll hear from Siobhan and Emer in terms of their experiences about going digital. They were a very paper-based organization and took the journey and basically sought the benefits of going digital, and they'll be sharing those with us later on. So as I say, for the first part of this session, I'll just walk through a number of slides, but then most importantly, we'll hear from Siobhan and Emer. So obviously the digital transformation, has basically affects all aspects of our lives, as we all know, and in every industry now. And that's come right from, when you think about mainframe computers, which were taking the whole space of a room, now right through to the introduction of personal computers, which came on board in the late certainly in the 1980s. Then we had the World Wide Web in the 1989, late 80s. And then we obviously had things like the smartphones, which they're never too far away from us. They came in the 90s. And if you can remember, I remember when the mobile phones came out, first of all, they were very clunky, but now they're very slick and very, very powerful. Yeah, all these devices. And the reality is we're using them probably more than we're actually aware of, whether that's through turning on a dishwasher at home to the lights, to getting messages on our watches, right through obviously then into the workplace of using them in work. And then we have the e-readers as such, where we had all those books where we were spending lots of time reading books, hopefully. And but that obviously doing away with those paperbacks, some people would prefer them, but there you go. So the invention of e-readers, right through then in the workplace, where you had all those binders, folders of all the different pieces of documentation that we need to run our different services, taken over by the use of devices, basically, whether that's laptop, iPads, mobile phones, desktop, whatever it might be. So you can see the evolution has happened, and we're all being affected by it. Not least, and this is seen in every sector, but not least the social care sector. And when we think about that in the social care sector, basically you've got different people that you've got to take into account. Obviously, you've got the service users themselves. Obviously, you've got their support circle. You've got the staff within the organization that you work within and management associated with that. Also got to bear in mind the commissioning bodies, whether it's HSE or the various CHOs in the areas or whatever the funders might be. You've got to bear those in mind, as well as the inspectorates and obviously HICWA. But some of the organization would work across multiple geographies, so they'd be familiar then with RQI and CQC as well. So these are the different people that need to be taken into account when you're looking at a digital solution and going digital in the services that you provide. Then obviously there's different services. Some organizations, or many organizations now, are not just focusing on one service. They're focusing on many services, whether that's learning or intellectual disabilities, mental health, residential, supported living, and so on. So there's various different services that are being provided in the market today, as we know. And each of these, again, need to be taken into account. And then each of these services have their own unique needs. Obviously, you're supporting people, and so there's therefore minimum, you've got person-centered plans, you've got minimum data set that you're capturing for each of the people that you're supporting, right through to working with them to identify goals and help them achieve those goals and outcomes, identifying the risks, obviously doing assessments, and then you've got your referral activities going on. You've also got your basically requirements that have to be met for, whether that's new directions, whether that's HICWA, whatever it might be. You've all of these different data needs, if you like, so that you can manage and govern your services very effectively. So there's lots of different components, if you like, when thinking about the digital solution and about going digital. And then obviously some of the key drivers for going digital, and again, each organization will have certain drivers, but these I think cover quite a few of them. You've got the national agenda, as you know, pursuing the digital path across the whole spectrum of services, and it's paving the way really for providing for integration in holistic, best-in-class care and support. And that was the key goal. And for example, even in the UK, the inspectorate bodies are basically going to be saying that unless a provider is not digitized, certainly within care plans and stuff like that, they will not achieve a certain level within an inspection, and that's becoming in play from mid-2024. So it's an interesting direction that they're taking. So there's a drive from all fronts to go digital, basically. Obviously, as I mentioned already, there's multiple services and getting more complex and more bespoke, obviously. Cost is a key driver, ensuring that, obviously you're reducing travel costs, printing costs, and all those hidden costs as well. And then the services are in many locations. There's been a big shift from congregational type services to more out in the community services. And that makes it more difficult to manage. Therefore, having a digital solution in place enables more effective management of those services because you have so many staff and people out at different places. Storage is a big issue for many providers. Storing, if certainly the organization that I worked in the past, it was very paper-based, and storage in terms of having those folders and stuff stored away effectively, because from a GDPR perspective, you had to retain the data. But then if you had to retrieve that data, it made it difficult because they were in binders. Inclusion is a big driver, making sure that we're actually ensuring that not just the service user is obviously at the center of the support needed, but also their extended support circle, whether that's family members and so on, and also making sure staff are very involved, obviously, in giving input and being included. And then one source of data, if you like, basically, particularly when services are largely paper-based, that provides challenges in terms of having standardized templates. Some templates go out of date, some locations are maybe using different types of versions of them, etc., etc. So having one digital plan as an example, or care support plan, or person-centered plan, makes it a lot easier because it's consistent then across the services. And then obviously governance is a key driver, and achieving that compliance, whether that's in relation to HSE, HICWA, or new direction standards. I mean, obviously you want to be able to manage those and achieve those standards. And then evidencing value is a key driver as well for many organizations. They know they're delivering excellent services, but how do they actually truly demonstrate that and demonstrate the value that they're bringing and enabling their service users to achieve those outcomes and goals that they want to achieve? That can be difficult if you don't have the data to hand. And so there are some of the common key drivers that we're seeing organizations mention to us. And then obviously, they're the key drivers. But okay, so what about some of the benefits then that you would actually achieve by going digital? Well, I've kind of broken it down into 3 different buckets: from a service user perspective, from the support team themselves perspective, and then from the management of the organization's perspective. And firstly, if we look at the service users and their support circle, well, obviously by having a digital solution, it really enables a lot more inclusion for the service users, and in particular their support circle, because you're able to involve them more effectively remotely, and because the solutions are digital, you're enabling the service user to be able to take a lot more control and ownership, and to be able to share content or pictures or celebrate different things that they've achieved, etc., and making sure that it's very person-centered. I mean, so an awful lot of benefits to going digital for the service user, because it's really putting them in the driver's seat and giving them a lot more control over their future and what support's in place for them. And then for the support team, obviously you've got the right support and the right making sure that the support team are given the right support in the right time. When technology is embedded seamlessly into care and support, it can be really transformative, improving people's quality of life and ensuring information is ready and available to help the staff provide the right care in the right place at the right time. So that's pretty key. And also for the staff to really have clarity on terms of the support they've got to provide, being very transparent on what's been achieved and what's slipped and needs to be caught up on again. It also, we've found working with providers that the communication is enhanced immensely, because everybody can really have the information at their fingertips and get up to speed very quickly with handovers and stuff like that. So really, really good. Support team also, really it enables them to really help the service user achieve those outcomes, because you can set the outcomes, you can set dates, owners, and it really drives ensuring that they're being delivered and the service users are being supported in a timely fashion. It also facilitates effective reviews, whether they're annual reviews or whether they're more required more frequently, depending on the person's needs, obviously. And then what's quite interesting is we've had a number of providers say to us, listen, when we go and implement an IT system, that it actually drives more ideas and interest from the team themselves, the staff support team, because they're seeing what the system can do, and then they're looking for more ideas to see if it can do further. So therefore enhancing more process improvement. So it's quite interesting from that perspective as well. And then from a management perspective, obviously a lot of benefits. You've got your information at your fingertips. You're not having to go around all these different locations where you're providing services. You're getting data that can help you measure and monitor and drive quality and operational efficiency within all the different services that you have. You're able to demonstrate compliance, whether it's HICWA coming in, whether it's HSE wanting to have a chat with you about you being able to demonstrate how you're compliant within the different regulations and standards, as well as being able to demonstrate that you're providing real impact and value for the service users that you're supporting. And a common theme that comes up from providers is basically having the data at their fingertips, and it's real-time data. You're not flicking through folders and stuff like that. It's real-time data, and that's very important for you to be able to facilitate making timely decisions. And then obviously from a management perspective, it's reduced costs, and reduced costs in many respects, not just those common costs like paper and storage, but also if you've got people who have got access to the information at their fingertips, they can reduce time on traveling to different locations. Or because you've got information at your fingertips, you can make those decisions a lot more quicker hence potentially saving costs on something that was in place and so on. So those sort of hidden costs as well. Then some of the key tips about going digital and some of the considerations, I suppose, that you need to bear in mind. Now, obviously, you know, if you've been through any change management, you'll obviously follow change management principles, because obviously implementing a digital solution is a significant thing, but a well worth project. But some of the key things, I suppose, if you like, is the executive sponsorship. I mean, that's key, making sure that there's you've got executive sponsorship within your organization, because obviously they can make sure there's a clear vision and a credible strategy for how your organization want to use the digital solution that you're pursuing. And that really will sort of ensure that the transformative power of technology is felt through the whole organization. It really facilitates better buy-in from staff as well, if you've got that clarity and vision set up very clearly at the forefront. You've got then things like communicate, and I deliberately put communicate in there, because communication is key, as you know, with any project that you're doing, and letting them know what the benefits are and so on. Planning is crucial. Transition rather than addition. So obviously, if you're implementing an IT solution, it's key to get across that message. It's just another tool, rather than writing in folders and stuff, like that. You're implementing stuff, whether it's text to speech or whether it's typing in stuff within a digital solution. So it's kind of transition rather than additional work that you're doing. Training is key, making sure those training resources are in place, and you've got those champions that are there to help, and also not putting too much at one time. You know your organization, so bite size, so that it's not too overwhelming for the staff, and then you can build upon it. Most solutions nowadays, I think, you can build on the core and then add on additional functionality if you need. Having those reviews, how is the project going? Are we making progress that we expected to? Having those steering meetings, ensuring that the executive are involved in those steering committees, and to make sure that you're getting their continued sponsorship for that. Celebrate the wins. So when you've introduced something and when you've got certain milestones with that, don't forget to celebrate those wins, because that really helps the staff, making sure the support that's required for the rollout of the tool or the IT solution that you've embarked upon. And then obviously the infrastructure, whether it's desktops, whether it's phones or iPhone, whatever it might be, tablets that the staff would be using, making sure that that's all in place. And then all of those things will obviously contribute to a successful rollout of the IT solution that you would be embarking upon. And, you know, I'm adding in communicate again there, because the reality is that is key. Communication right through, as you know, to land anything effectively, that is really, really important. So really, they're just a few of my thoughts based on my learning from my own experience, as well as the learnings from what I've gleaned from many organizations that I've helped rolled out iPlanet as an example. So rather than me talking, I'm going to now basically, in the spirit of sharing experiences, we're really delighted to have Siobhan and Emer with us today, and they're going to share some learning. So I'm just going to take the time now to get them to share their learnings with us. So it's one thing me talking about going digital and the benefits of that, but I think what's really more important is when we hear actually from providers within the market itself, and like yourselves working within that space. And I'm delighted to have with us today Siobhan Buckley, who's the quality manager, and Emer Keenan, who's the research and development officer from the Prosper organization. And that organization provides invaluable services within the Fingal and Meath area for adults with intellectual disabilities. So Emer and Siobhan, thanks a million for taking the time to be with us today. Really appreciate that. And I'm just going to ask a few questions, and basically then really for you to share your learnings so that others can glean as well from that experience, if you don't mind. So maybe Siobhan, I'll start with yourself first of all. And as we think of the whole sort of space about going digital, I mean, could you tell us from your organization's perspective, what the key drivers were for you to consider going digital?
Yes, sure, Clive. Well, look, we needed one go-to place for current information that we kept in relation to the people we supported. We had systems for like HR and finance and the likes, but when it came to the data we held frontline, we knew that was an area that needed attention. So we were primarily paper-based, and we would have had like various documents, be they assessments or reports or support plans, in different folders across the different services. And we were also seeing, I suppose, an increase of soft copy documents that were beginning to kind of arrive in different computers. So the requirement to keep data was increasing, and the locations were increasing. So essentially, it was like a manual exercise for staff to access or to know or to update or share information among themselves, or even across different services. So if somebody was in day services and also about respite or clinical sports. So we were encountering like many issues with cluttered files, like an inconsistency of approach in different services. There was duplicate information. There was information not necessarily being kept up to date just because it's just difficult to do so. When we were doing audits, you know, a lot often we would find reviews were overdue. And even just deciphering people's handwriting was beginning to become an issue. So we knew we needed one go-to place and that it had to be IT based. We didn't really know what that might look like, but we just felt we needed to start phasing paper out. So that was probably the key driver initially for us to consider going digital. And another key driver was that we wanted to put our personal planning process online. We wanted to find a more efficient way for staff to evidence and to monitor person-centered delivery. I mean, we all know administration can be a huge challenge for frontline staff. And I suppose with all of us being pushed into more of a digital age, and we were seeing staff and individuals joining Prosper who were fairly proficient in navigating IT platforms rather than handwriting notes and plans. So we knew we had to catch up, and we had to kind of think forward in terms of how we become more digital. Another key factor at the time was new directions had been implemented, and our services were moving more to a hub kind of style, more community-based. Staff were working more fluidly, not necessarily in the services, they were dipping in and out of services. And we knew we had to have a kind of, people who were kind of more mobile in terms of their work, that they could access data and access information or update information more on the go, rather than having to present in a centre in the morning or come back at the end of the day in order to update their work. So that was a factor as well. We knew if we went digital that perhaps we'd be moving that direction where staff would be able to work more in a more mobile fashion. And that was before COVID-19, before there was any talk of remote work. We hadn't even considered that at the point. So again, when considering going digital, in order to deliver on new directions, we knew we had to be thinking that way. And I suppose wearing the governance hat, having oversight over service delivery and having data kind of much more quicker would have been a strong motivating factor for our executive management team and for our board of directors, especially with the increasing reporting and compliance and regulatory obligations that have been placed on Prosper and various organisations like ourselves. So having that oversight without having to request, a report and wait for days for the information to be gathered, and then having to validate that information before you can send it on, we knew ourselves that if we were using a more digital process, that perhaps we could access that data quicker and rely on it much faster. And then finally, I think it may not have been a key driver at the time, but certainly became one as we went along, was that the whole storing and archiving of paper files is just becoming a bigger issue in terms of costs, because cartridges and paper and folders, prices were going up, procurement was coming more to the fore, and then just space, like filing rooms, were just filling up and attics were filling up. So we knew by moving to a more paperless option was going to be attractive in that respect. So they were probably the key drivers for Prosper at that time.
Oh, that's great, Siobhan. It's interesting. It's sort of a lot of those things resonate with me, because when I think back with the organisation that I was working with, and I was CEO there for a charity which supported adults with learning disabilities, and a lot of those drivers, we were paper-based. I'd come from an IT background, and so it was kind of a culture shock coming into an organisation that was just paper-driven. Now my handwriting's terrible. So actually trying to write, read notes and for the staff to follow through on things was actually quite difficult. Also, storage was a big issue. So yeah, a lot of those brings back memories. And we did it about 4 years ago. And funny enough, we went to market and we selected iPlanet to go and implement it as well. So, but yeah, so a lot of those things come back to memory. Just going on from that then, I mean, obviously it's identifying the key drivers, as you've mentioned. But then, how did you approach actually going digital? Commencing down that path. What was the the driver? You've mentioned the driver, should I say? But what was that key thing that said, okay, we need to get going here?
Well, we started looking at what IT solutions were out there. Just trying to find something that might suit our line of work, our nature of work, and the people that we supported. And there was really minimal options, to be honest. So initially, what we did is we tried to build a system for Prosper, like a bespoke system. And we engaged and worked hard on that for like 2 to 3 years. And we found the more we engaged with it, though, we were changing our practices and our processes and our language to kind of fit the software. And over time, we knew it was just sounding kind of intuitive, not intuitive, I should say, for staff. That we needed something a lot more user-friendly. So we actually walked away from that then and started looking what solutions were out there again. And at that stage, we wanted a kind of an off-the-shelf platform, ideally, that we could configure, to suit, but we weren't starting from scratch. And iPlanet definitely allowed for that. I remember the initial calls. This would have been 2019. And we had initial calls with Aspirico, and I think what was really attractive and exciting for us at the time, it was the first time we really saw a system that was specific for our industry. And, when in speaking with the Aspirico staff, it was very clear it was developed by people who knew the industry. We had the same language, we knew what we were talking about. And, it wasn't a case of, well, what are you looking for? It was a real case of just how do we tease out exactly what you want and how best can we achieve that together. So we were straight away, this is it for us. We were very excited as well that the whole initial part that we were looking at was the data was totally built around the person we were supporting, and that's what we wanted as well. So we started then by asking Aspirico to give a demo to all the key personnel in the company. We knew we needed buy-in from everybody before we started. So we had a session where we invited the executive management team, representatives of managers, staff frontline. We had clinicians there. We had health and safety. There was people from HR, from finance, every corner of the organisation, so that we could all come together and, I suppose, decide, are we going to go this direction? It gave them an opportunity to ask Aspirico questions wearing their own individual hats. And then we could secure approvals and discuss budgets and those kind of things. So once we got the go-ahead, as an organisation, Prosper decided to start with the core iPlanet only. We were very excited by the fact that we could add optional modules as we went along, and we could gradually build a more integrated system and include as well the giving access to people we supported. But as an organisation, we decided at the time to just start with the core iPlanet. Like, as I said, one of the drivers was that we wanted to bring our personal planning process online. So core iPlanet had functionality for that, and we felt that was a good place to start for us. So we then assigned specific staff to the project. Emer and I were part of that from the outset. It helped that we were involved in personal planning and training across the organisation for a number of years. And we also worked on various projects across the organisation as well. And I suppose it allowed us to have access to whomever we needed. We could get decisions made when they needed to be made. We knew who to talk to when, and that helped move the project along, and I think was very helpful. From the outset, we basically consulted very widely in-house. That was a big stage for us. It was where we weren't really sure where to start. We didn't really sure exactly what we wanted. Emer and I and the rest of my colleagues wouldn't have had the answers to what we needed. So we had an awful lot of focus groups, and we brought various people in just to ask, like, what do we want the system to do for us, for what reason, and what might that look like. And so that planning phase probably was the longest phase, and we consulted up and down and inside out, and was a very key part. And it stood us well because since we have gone live with the system, we have very rarely had to tweak it, because I think we built kind of what we wanted from the outset. It was then just working with Aspirico to get that first look. We tested as we went along, just to make sure it was doing what we thought it would do. We made tweaks, and we gradually built each section, and we'd have very regular meetings with Aspirico, and they would direct us along, and we would do the work in between the calls. And then it was communication. We just had to look at the whole communication across the board to all the different stakeholders, because we were moving more towards rollout. But because we included people in the whole planning phase, the word was already out. It wasn't a project that was in the background. Everybody knew it was coming, and a lot of people were involved. And as we were receiving different cuts, we would make those available to people to check. Was it what they expected? So communication was very gradual and constant. Then we scheduled staff training. We had planned to roll it out on a phase basis, and we were all ready to go. And that was probably early 2020, and COVID-19 hit. I remember Lisa Jane Humphreys, the client director that was working with us. She had our flights booked to come, and COVID arrived within the week. So we had to change our approach. We were gutted at the time. We thought, rollout is cancelled. But in fact, it had advantages because we had to move faster then, and it had its disadvantages as well. But it meant that we had to roll out quicker and roll out remotely and all of that. But it certainly got traction quicker. So we had a considered action plan. We had different responsibilities allocated to different people. We worked to certain timeframes, and that's how we kept the project on track, if you like. I had various start, stops, but we got there in the end in May, June 2020.
Brilliant. Thanks, Siobhan. Obviously, a common thread and a consistent thread coming through there in your very methodical approach was clarity, making sure everybody was very clear on what you were trying to achieve as an organisation. Also, engagement, and then, as you mentioned there, communication. They're key threads and common components of a good, successful rollout, and you've mentioned those, so that's very good. Siobhan, I'm going to give you a little break now and go to Emer. Emer, obviously, as an organisation, having the vision to go digital, that's one thing, an important starting point, obviously, to have it from the top. But then, obviously, actually making that a reality on the ground. How did you engage with staff to really get them on board on this digital journey?
Well, Clive, apart from a very minimal number of staff who felt they weren't IT savvy, the majority of staff came on board very easily and very quickly. And I think it's down to the two things that Siobhan has already mentioned, which is the fact that we already live in a digital era. So staff were using and are using online platforms on a day-to-day basis. So they have already seen the benefits of that, but also that very effective consultation and consistent communication. That very much was key to having staff coming on board. As Siobhan's mentioned already, when we developed our iPlanet system with Aspirico, we were replicating an already well-established personal planning system that was predominantly paper-based, and we were moving it online. And iPlanet allowed us, therefore, to use terminology that staff were already familiar with. And I know it might seem like a small thing, but iPlanet actually even has help buttons and other features. So you're able to put help buttons in to prompt staff how to use the system. So again, we were able to replicate instructions that staff were already familiar with. Alongside that then, we had very strong transition planning. So we put a transition plan in place of how we were going to get information that was currently being recorded in a paper-based way. How were we going to get that online? So we set manageable targets with staff, and that was all through, as Siobhan's already said, very well considered staff consultation, so that staff felt they were part of that journey and they felt that those targets were manageable for them and achievable for them. And we supplemented that with a paper guide. Again, it might sound very simplistic, but it was a paper guide that said, okay, this is where that information is currently recorded in paper. This is where you now record it on iPlanet. And it might seem very simple, but just having those little pointers for staff just engages them and makes the whole transition so much easier for them. Another thing that we did was we had staff training, and Aspirico helped us with that. The training was meant to be in person, but it had to be delivered online. But there's benefits with that as well, because it meant that we were able to record that training and have it forevermore. We supplemented that online training with guides, how-to guides, which are literally step-by-step instructions on the different functionality on iPlanet with screenshots from iPlanet. And what we did then was we took that online training and we took those guides and we saved them to a dedicated intranet page, iPlanet intranet page for our staff. And that means that staff can go back and they can relook at that training again, or they can pull out those guides wherever they need it. In addition to that, then on iPlanet, we set up a pretend service user called Mary Prosper, and that's been invaluable to staff. So staff can lean on Mary Prosper. If they're not sure how to word a plan item or how to go about putting in a risk rating, they can look at Mary Prosper and see how it's done for Mary Prosper, and that gets them a start on the journey. Apart from having that, I suppose, more official widespread training, what we did was we kept an eye on how staff were getting on, and we were trying to see if there were areas where staff were struggling. And we noticed that staff were struggling maybe around getting their head around goal setting. So we did a specific bite-sized video about that, and we added that to the intranet, and we also did some in-person support at a team level. Apart from that, then we set up an iPlanet support email address, and that has worked out brilliantly because there's 4 administrators on it. Siobhan and I are part of that team, and it means that staff have somewhere that they can send any iPlanet query, no matter how big or small it is. And we also use that as a vehicle to set new staff up on iPlanet and also password resets. So that has been really invaluable. And then the final piece would be making some additional IT equipment available. I'm not talking about 200 new laptops, but I suppose it showed staff how invested we were in iPlanet and how invested we were in them and supporting them to do their job properly and most efficiently. So when you put all of those pieces together, I think it's been very effective in engaging staff and getting them on board.
Great, thanks, Emer. I mean, I think it obviously shows that it's important to put a lot of thought into how it's going to land with the staff, because obviously if it lands well there, then obviously they'll be more efficient in their work, but also most importantly, more beneficial for the people that they're supporting. I mean, as a follow-on question, maybe, I mean, in an environment obviously where we're all about assisting people that you're supporting in a very person-centered way, as you referenced. Has going digital helped with implementing iPlanet?
Oh, hugely, Clive. Absolutely, hands down, without a doubt. I mean, with iPlanet at the touch of a button from any device, you can see what information is being recorded about people, whether that's through the notes and logs that staff are making on a daily or weekly basis, whether it's what goals they're working on, whether it's how they're supported. All of that information is there, as I say, at the touch of a button. Whereas previously, if you were trying to get a hold of that information, you would have to go to the location from where the service user was being supported, find their individual folder, and leaf through different sections to try and find the information you needed. Or if you weren't in a position to get out to the location, you'd be relying on a staff member or a manager making that information available to you. And you'd be going on their word of mouth rather than seeing the evidence for yourself. So I think then where that's hugely beneficial is through staff supervision. So you can sit down with a staff member and you can pull up a service user's profile, and in real time you can discuss with the staff member how they are supporting the service user. You can very much see what's happening for that person. Has their plan reviews happened on time? Has their planning meetings happened on time? What goals have they set? What progress is happening? And you can have a really rich conversation then about that, as opposed to previously where you might have been sitting down with staff with a white file, flittering through bits of paper that may not be current or up to date. I think personally for us in QNS, where it has been a game changer is through personal planning audits. So at the moment, I'm one of the people who's involved in personal planning audits. And it's been a game changer for me, an absolute game changer. I mean, even this morning, I was sitting down in front of the computer, pulling up information about different residents that are supported in our residential services. And I can get a real feel through the notes and logs and through what's in their PCP and their ISP about how those people are being supported. It makes my time very effective, because then when I go out on site to the location, I know already what questions I want to ask and what avenues I want to go down, as opposed to previously where I was appearing and I'd be there early for the day, because I'd have to do all that investigative or tabletop work in the location before I even got to speak to the service users themselves and staff. So it's much better use of my time, and then I'm less invasive then when I'm on site, because I'm there asking very specific questions that iPlanet has led me to ask. And then apart from that, I think in terms of making this big change to effective personal planning for people is that iPlanet allows for the service user to have their own login, and that's where we're going ultimately, and where we always knew from the beginning we wanted to go. So when we developed our iPlanet with Aspirico, that was always to the forefront of our mind of, okay, when the service user gets their login, what's it going to look like for them? So we have icons on our iPlanet, and they are icons that we came up with in consultation with, the likes of the speech and language therapy department, but they're the icons that we already use in our ISP and our PCP paperwork. So they're icons that the service users are already familiar with and have already had a hand in deciding would be appropriate. So we've always kept the service user focus there through our iPlanet. And again, it's a bit like what I said at the end of the last question. When you roll all of that together, it's keeping your service user, and effective personal planning for them at the centre of what you do.
Great. No, that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Siobhan, if I come back to you, I mean, obviously, you're down the road now. You're on the digital journey as such. You've implemented the iPlanet solution. I mean, on reflection now, and I know you're still on that journey, and you've referenced some of the benefits already, but what would you see as the key benefits of going digital?
The key benefits, there's many. Many that unfolded as we went along. Definitely weren't aware. I suppose you just couldn't be, because it was such a new journey for us. What we've been saying, I suppose, between us, I can hear it coming off all the time, is just having instant access now to data for each person we support in one place, from any device. That has changed how Prosper works, for sure. It allows staff to work more fluidly, and we're all working from the same place. We're all working together on the same data. Emer has really well explained there how much it has brought personal planning to life. We were doing it for years. People understood its value and its importance, but I think it certainly helped engage staff at all levels in terms of the process and their role in terms of the process. It's now really clear, as Emer said, to see how people are being supported, and much easier to see progress in that regard per person. I think it gave staff much more ownership over evidencing the great work that they do. It's now part of their everyday. They mightn't get to update a quick note into the system every day, but they'll certainly do it the day after or the day after that. So it's fairly live, and all staff being able to support each other when they are helping to support a person this is allowed for that now. So if you're trying to support an individual as a key worker and your manager wants to support you with that, you're all looking at that data. If you need the support of a clinician to add to that, or if you're just liaising to the residential staff team and you're trying to work together around some particular aspect or goal that the person's working on, again, you can, from your office, from your desk, from your laptop, from your house, from your car, you can work together. So that has been a great benefit to us. The managers were here last week actually, and knowing this was coming up, I was just asking them, the frontline managers, what would you say the key benefit of that has been? And they were very quick to say that it has allowed them to have much more oversight over their service, the service they're in charge of. And it's very transparent to them. They can look up a particular person they're supporting. They can look up a particular staff member and the people they're supporting, and they can work much more closely with each around, moving and driving that quality of care forward. And now that we have advanced further into the process, there's a lot more data being added into the system. So the managers are now being able to really use that to mentor and to supervise staff. Instead of coming in with all your folders and your bits and pieces, you're able to just share a screen and discuss and troubleshoot and set targets together. So of recent times now, that has been really adding value for us. From a governance perspective, I think Prosper can now evidence really clearly that we do deliver high quality services and valued services to the people we're supporting. And we can demonstrate that to a funder should we be asked, the HSE, to any regulator, or by any monitoring process that we know are part and parcel of our services. It's much easier to get information, even just for a presentation or for a HSE report. We have used iPlanet very effectively for HICWA inspections over the past year or so. We can access data really quickly if we want to make a business case for resourcing for somebody. So all of that now in recent months is again, as I say, it wasn't a benefit we could see clearly at the beginning, but it's definitely one we're availing of now. And definitely just knowing that the information is secure. It's great peace of mind to know that we're not paperless yet. We're still working in that direction, but we're much closer to being GDPR compliant, and we have much tighter controls over who has access to data and for what purpose and for how long. Through iPlanet, you can really quickly, if a staff member joins or an individual joins, or should they leave or they move internally, there's real quick controls to just, move that data around with them, and, there's no moving files and driving things around. And the real anticipated benefit, I suppose, for us was COVID-19. We weren't ready for that, nobody was. But it showed the true value of going digital, because we were just about to roll out in March 2020, and staff then were suddenly working remotely. And had we not been able to roll out, even though we rolled out differently than planned, it would have been just a much more of a challenge, I think, for staff to access information or to track the delivery we were providing at that time, which was scattered, when the services were all shut. So I think by us, COVID-19 allowed us we had to just roll out with everybody, and it got traction quickly because staff had to engage. It was challenging for them, no doubt. But when they returned then to services, we were able to do that front-facing piece that Emer was talking about there, and bring in much more, I suppose, on-site support as we needed. So yeah, so they were key benefits. Like as I said, I could keep talking. Really,
No, it's great. It is interesting. The governance is a big theme, certainly in the HICWA regulations, and I don't know if you've seen the latest, I suppose, annual report from HICWA, where it certainly calls out governance as an area of concern. There's about 60% that are compliant, and the rest are either substantially or not. And I think what's probably interesting in that is, probably a driver for that is because there's lots of services maybe that have lots of different locations, and like what you kind of alluded to earlier as well, Emer, trying to go out to those different locations and to keep governance on them, it can be a challenge. But if you have it on a digital platform, obviously that makes it a lot easier. And if you say you can have information at your fingertips at any time from anywhere, so it just makes it a lot more manageable, and more effective use.
Yeah, like we have close on 27 service delivery locations now, scattered across, 2 massive counties. So, like, for exactly as you said, that's
big win from that perspective.
Good timing for us, yeah. Where when we were smaller, you were able to drive around much quicker, and in person so much more. But now, from a government's perspective, it is really important that you can monitor and I suppose oversee those services and be in the know of what's going on without having to be on the road the whole time.
Yeah, very good. Good. I mean, one final question I'll ask you then, Siobhan, if you don't mind. Obviously, organisations and some listening today will maybe have already embarked, or some are considering embarking on the digital journey. What advice would you give to them?
Advice. Well, look.
Or suggestions or learning.
If we were starting again, or I was giving advice to someone at the starting blocks, I think one of the first things is definitely to put a dedicated resource to the project. That can be challenging, of course, because recruitment and staffing is a big challenge in the sector at the minute. But I think it really helped for us that there was like 3 of us, and IT worked alongside us all the way as well. Who had space within our role, or were given space within our role, to work really closely together to kind of be that consistent go-to between Aspirico and the organisation, and across all the services in the organisation. And we all divvied out different things between us and just met very regularly. It doesn't have to be a big team, or it could, it's the smaller the better, because it just keeps communication really tight. And I think, I was saying earlier, I think taking the time to be clear about what you actually want to take and have from Aspirico, because iPlanet definitely can do so much, and you can cut your cloth to measure, if you like, depending on where you're at as an organisation. You can start small and grow big, or you can go in and take on as much as you like. So I think it's good to take the time to decide, well, what is it you want to do first, and just concentrate on that. And for us, that meant then consulting widely to make sure everyone was clear on the purpose, and that it was going to do what everybody anticipated it to do. So that planning phase is well worth the time. I think for training, because of COVID-19, we weren't able to train out the way we planned. I think for staff to be trained, it's much easier for them if they had iPlanet on a laptop or on a PC in front of them as they were, learning how to use it. We, as Emer said, we recorded the training online, and that's fine, but you're not engaging in the same way. So definitely, I think, even though that might be slower, you don't have to do that in person, but you can still do that, in some way online. But I think that engagement by the staff member with the system is very important and helps them to understand it quicker. Definitely supported by the guidance. We did written guidance. Everybody has a folder. Every service has a folder, and it has each of the sections like a guidance with literally pictures and arrows. Just to, if someone's stuck, they can lean on that. If they can't catch anybody to get the advice they need, it's step by step, and it'll show them how to do it. And that is very beneficial. You can underestimate that sometimes. And yeah, I think the support email, we kind of set that up quickly at the time, just to be there for people. But in fact, we still have it running now constantly because it just allows staff to contact you directly if they're just needs some advice. You're there. They don't always have to wait on the manager to show them. You know, you can just help them very quickly. We have the password resets and linking people to different people and moving people around. But there's also just that little, I don't know where to put this or how should I word that. And you know, it's helpful to have a support line for them to do their job that way. And yeah, I think one of our board directors actually advised us to write down procedures as we went along in terms of how we administrated the system. We were kind of learning that on the fly. So that would be like how you set up a new individual, or how you kind of a new staff member joins the team. You know, Emer and I and a few of our colleagues would administrate that. But we definitely started writing down the procedures should any of us not be around, that someone else could do it. And that was good. And we're still doing that. We're still evolving it as we're learning. And the last thing is really just, I suppose, just to encourage and you know people to practice and to just jump in and do it, because no amount of training or guidance or anything will help. Other than it will help, of course, but it's really the doing. You know, any of the staff now who are very used to iPlanet and are comfortable with it have all said to us, "Oh, I was daunted at the beginning." It's natural, like it's a change. And you know, but it's just doing it, figuring it out. You know, it's very intuitive once you get in there. It's the same for most people. There's a lot to copy from and learn from. You know, you can see other people in your service and what they're doing. So you know, I think just ensuring that staff have the confidence to just go. I think a lot of people might have been afraid that they might delete someone's information or they'll do something to the system. You know. And obviously, iPlanet is so locked down, you can't do that. So it's just, it's very much encouraging all levels of staff to just, you know, trust themselves. And it eventually just gets easier. So yeah, that's probably the tips, I'd say.
Great. Well, listen, Siobhan and Emer, I mean, thanks a million for your time today. I mean, I think it's great, as I said from the very beginning, you know, I can talk about iPlanet or going digital, but when people hear directly from folk that have already done it, even though I have done it as well myself, but it's good the way you've shared your learnings and the benefits that you've gained, and obviously you'll continue on the path and get more benefits, no doubt. But no, thank you for sharing today. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Clive. Thank you.